Hello, I'm Paul Beckwith. Continuing on the theme of wet bulb temperature of 35 degrees Celsius or 95 Fahrenheit and 100% humidity. That's kind of the limit of human physiology. The ability of the human body to throw off heat stops when we reach that wet bulb temperature. And surprisingly, we're reaching that temperature right now at various parts of the planet. And this is considered a limit of survivability. You know, up until now, it's generally the conditions, surprisingly, on the planet had a maximum wet bulb temperature of about 31 degrees Celsius. The temperatures could be extremely high in the desert, but the humidity would be very low, giving that wet bulb of 31 degrees. Or closer to the equatorial regions, the humidity would be very high and the temperature is much more moderate, giving that same type of wet bulb temperature, 31. But in recent years, we've pushed past 33 in some regions, 34. And now it appears that we're reaching 35 and higher in various regions of the planet. So I'm going to show you data on these regions. I'm also going to talk about a paper that was published a few years ago that looked at all of the mechanisms through which people would die from elevated temperature, humidity conditions. There's 7 major organ systems that can be harmed by these very, very high temperatures. And there's 5 different classes of medical conditions that can lead to death. So that would be 7 times 5, 35 different possibilities. And it turns out that medically, there's some conditions that don't happen. So there's basically 27 ways to die from excessive heat. And this is very, very serious. Of course, when we talk about areas of the planet becoming uninhabitable, we often think of sea level rise, the number of people that would be displaced from the coastlines as sea level rises, and that's a huge number. But surprisingly, people tend to overlook the uninhabitable regions of the planet that will arise from just heat stress being too much for the human body to deal with. So let me go right into the data here. But before I do that, I just want to. You're wondering where the kitty cat is. And let me just move the camera here. I don't want to disturb him. There he is right here. This is the star of the show. And well, this is Shackleton, of course. He was kind of sleeping. He's been a bit grumpy lately, so he's a bit more playful now. Hey, kitty cat. Okay, so you've had your Shackleton fix, and basically we all need our Shackleton fix in light of this data here. So this is the website Meteorologics, and basically I'm looking at 2019, yesterday, 2:30 p.m. local time, looking at the wet bulb temperature. Wet bulb temperature exceeding 35 degrees Celsius or 95 Fahrenheit is here. So it's the pink areas. So up in this area here, up in this part, so this is India here, and we have Pakistan, and up in this region here we have a widespread region where wet bulb temperature is above 35. So let's have a look. We can advance to 5:30 p.m. and there's only one here. Okay, we can go back to 2:30. So there's lots of them up in this region here. Go back to 11:30 and you see some areas here. So basically the conditions are, in 830 there's none. So basically, this area here exceeds wet bulb at 1130. It's still there at 2:30, and it's gone at 5:30. Okay, so you need a sustained about 6 hours of wet bulb temperature, and you could be sitting in the shade, gale force winds, covered in sweat, or spraying water on yourself, and your body core temperature heats up because of the tolerance conditions. So let's go the physiology. So let's go back to 2:30, and then we could look at some previous days. So this is June 18th. We can go back to the previous day, and there's, again, this region here, widespread exceedance of 35 degrees Celsius wet bulb temperatures. I don't know how people are surviving in this region, to be honest. I think there must be mass mortalities there. This is the previous day. Go back another day. This is the June. So basically, that's the last 4 days. 5 days, it's even more widespread. Okay, so this region here seems to be reaching this limit, not for 6 hours in the day, but for shorter periods of time. We can look at the actual temperatures at this time. Okay, so you can see the temperatures there. So it looks like you can see the maximum temperature over a 12-hour time period. Okay, so 48 there. You can see the relative humidity. Okay, the different percentages of relative humidity. And again, the wet bulb temperature. You can also look at things like the winds in these locations, different wind gusts, etc. Okay, so there's a lot of different choices that we have here. Temperature and humidity, again, wet bulb. And this is at 5:30. Let's go back to 2:30. Okay, so this is obviously a big problem area. Now let's look at, okay, well, why isn't it? I should be able to navigate around, refresh, zoom out, zoom in. Okay, so we don't want to zoom, we just want to move, change map selection. Okay, let's go to different area here, Europe and Africa. Let's go to the area of the Middle East here. See if I can zoom in on this area. Okay, Saudi Arabia regions. Okay, Middle East, United Arab Emirates, for example. Okay, and okay, this is wet bulb temperature here. Okay, this is 30. Let's cycle through the days here. Okay, so we're approaching, along some of the coastlines, we're approaching that 35. So I highly recommend that you play with this. Let's go back to where we were before. Okay, so you can go to any region of the world, any country, and you can look at what the, how close we are to reaching that wet bulb temperature of 35 degrees Celsius. So we've got these regions here. Okay, on this map here, those are the particular regions where, okay, so this is a closer view. So or let's go back to the present date here. Okay, so at 2:30 in the afternoon, you know, the highest I've seen is about 43 degrees wet bulb temperature. There's a 44. 37. Okay, 40. So pretty consistently, you know, let's go to the maximum where we had the 44. There we go, 44, and let's have a look at 5:30. You know, I highly recommend that you look at this yourself. Okay, so we're no readings at 3:30 p.m. 4:30, 5:30. Okay. Some readings, there were some intermediate readings. Let's go earlier. 12:30. 11:30 should fill up. Okay, so there's definitely some regions that are approaching having that wet bulb temperature exceeding 35 for 6 hours in the day, and there must be huge numbers of fatalities in these regions. You know, hopefully there's no major city in those regions. Okay, so let's have a look at 27 ways to lose your life in the heat. Okay, here's the main organ system, 7 main organ systems that can be negatively affected by the heat: the brain, the respiratory system, the heart, the liver, the pancreas, the kidneys, and the intestines. All of these areas can be subject to degradation sufficient enough to kill you when you reach those wet bulb temperatures of 35 for an extended, well, for 6 to 8 hours. Okay, now the mechanisms that kill you, there's things like ischemia. The external heat causes the hypothalamus to divert blood to the skin to cool the body down. This reduces blood flow to internal organs, depriving cells of oxygen and unleashing dangerous, damaging chemical compounds. And then you can get another process kicking in, heat cytotoxicity, the production of compounds that are poisonous to cells. So these things can lethally affect the function of the brain, heart, liver, kidneys, and intestines, and trigger further responses if they don't cause death by themselves. And then you can have a combination of different things. So this was a study that was done a few years ago. This is from November 11, 2017. So I went to the original source paper, and here's where it is. So basically, you know, it talked about the 70,000 people during the 2003 European heat wave that died, deaths in excess of 70,000 people, 10,000 people during the 2010 Russian heat wave, and high death tolls from numerous other heat waves are staggering demonstrations that extreme climatic conditions are already exceeding human thermoregulatory capacity. The area of the planet experiencing heat wave conditions similar to those that have killed people is expanding and is currently inhabited by about 30% of the world's human population. And it goes on and talks about the different pathways of causing, of the way a person dies from excessive heat. And this table kind of summarizes the results. So you have these 7 different organs, and you have these 5 different mechanisms. This is where the blood flow is diverted to the skin. This is the temperature is just too high for cells, so the membranes are affected. They release toxins. White blood cells come and fight the disease. The blood thickens up, and there's another mechanism here. So I'm going to go into some of these things in more detail. Thanks.